Let's get a little talking there. Hey, good morning. The Committee on Regulatory Reform will now come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Carter,
Present.
Representatives Liberati,
Present.
Neely,
Here.
Scott,
Present.
Young,
Here.
Grant,
Present.
McFall,
Here.
Snyder,
Here.
Wilson,
Present.
Mueller,
Here.
Filler,
Yep.
Wenzel, Aragona, Beerline,
Here.
Nyer.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 13 members, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Rep. McFall moves to adopt the minutes from the March 7th, 2023 meeting. Seeing no objections, the minutes are adopted. Today, we have a presentation from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission, and then we'll be taking testimony on 3 bills on our agenda. Once we return from spring break, we will vote these bills out. With that, we'll first welcome David Marvin, Carrie Crone from the Michigan Liquor Control Commission to provide an overview. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, and thank you to the rest of the members for having us here today. My name is Carrie Crone. I'm the business manager for the Liquor Control Commission. And David Marvin, he is a deputy director with our executive services at the commission. So we're happy to hear, wanted to cover just some few informational highlights and give you an overview of the commission.
So the Michigan Liquor Control Commission was officially formed just about 90 years ago, coming up here in early April. We will have our official 90th anniversary. Prohibition, as you may know, Michigan was the first of all of the states to ratify the 21st Amendment, and that was done on April 10th of 1933. And the commission ultimately came about in late April through legislation in 1933. There was a constitutional amendment that created the Liquor Control Commission. Currently, it's in the Constitution of 1963, but it was in the 1908 Constitution that was ratified by the voters of Michigan back in November of 1932. So we have got a little bit of history behind us, and the Michigan Constitution essentially created the Liquor Control Commission, but it also not only created the Liquor Control Commission, but it vested the authority to create the law for the Liquor Control Commission in the legislature. So the Constitution created us. The legislature is the one that governs us through the Michigan Liquor Control Code. And we are a Type 1 agency that is housed in the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs. We do have some autonomy based off of that, but we are a bureau within that department. And throughout our existence, the Liquor Control Act that was originally codified in 1933 and then recodified as the Liquor Control Code in 1998 has had this provision in it that obviously we have to follow the act that's been passed and signed into law by the legislature and the governor. But the other key component of that is that we are to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of the state of Michigan as it is related to the sale of alcoholic liquor. And that is something that the Liquor Control Commission takes very important part of our role. We take it very seriously. It's something that we look at in a variety of different avenues as we are looking at licensing and violations and the different ways that we enforce the Liquor Control Code.
One thing we like to make sure people understand, and our chair actually mentions this often, is the 4 C's. So in Michigan, we have our customers, our choice. We have a lot of product available for them, competition and control. So in Michigan, you will find alcohol beverages right on store shelves in retail outlets that also have grocery items as well as your bar and restaurants. So we have a lot of opportunity for individuals in Michigan and as well as for our businesses in Michigan. That really leads me into our next slide where we have a graph that indicates the number of spirit alcohol SKUs that the state of Michigan has over the past several years, as well as currently. These are the products that are sold through the state of Michigan, through the MLCC. We are the wholesaler of all of the, as we term, kind of a hard spirit alcohol. We currently have a little over 11,000 different SKUs available to our retail licensees and then ultimately to their customers.
And our retailer licensees, and actually this number that we have here of this 1,000 or 107,000 licenses includes both retailers and manufacturers and wholesalers. But it is a very large number. I think a lot of people don't realize how many licenses and permits that we have to handle throughout a year, a calendar year. And actually, we base it more on a licensing year that starts May 1st each year. We are currently going through our renewal process right now, and so this is probably the busiest time of the year for the Liquor Control Commission. We have to process quite a few, 107,000 licenses here between now and May 1st. And so we have staff working not round the clock, but quite a few hours. We just got done working on the mailing, and that was a big push that we had. So your constituents right now are getting in the mail their renewals, and they can renew online. And this year, excitingly, we can renew online and pay credit card. That was something that we've been pushing for, and so that's a big change, and we're very happy for that.
Yeah, as David indicated, we have been doing enhancements to our systems and to our customers, our licensees, over the past several years. We like to try and continue that. We're so excited this year to be able to have the credit card ability for our online renewal. Licensees can also do renewal through the portal via like an ACH through their bank account as well. Another really busy time of year for us, and really comes right after renewal. It is year-round, but obviously with Michigan in the summer season and the weather that gets so wonderful, we have a number of individuals that like to do special event licenses. These are our 24-hour special licenses that nonprofits get. You'll see a number of those events take place in your communities, I'm sure, throughout the year. And prior to the pandemic, we were doing close to 9,000 of those special event licenses annually. Obviously, that went down slightly during those few years, but we actually this past year are starting to grow back up. We expect maybe this year to actually hit about 8,000 or so. So those are something, again, a busy time of year for us. Year-round, however, it does, obviously, with the season, get quite a bit busier in the summer months. So.
And these checks that we have here, we always wanted to have one of those big ones that you always see that they give out at grants, but it would be hard to, to reproduce those every year. So we wanted you to see what the Liquor Control Commission returns to the legislature to be appropriated each year. Coming up for the previous fiscal year, from fiscal year 22, it's $633 million and change. And that is actually broken down. We have some statutory provisions that require us to that money to go certain places. And you can see outside of the general fund money, which is $444 million that the legislature can appropriate as it sees fit in the different appropriations, there are specific pieces of the pie that go certain places. So we have distributions to counties through the Convention Facility Development Fund, which is $67 million. School aid fund, $76 million, pardon me. School aid fund is $76 million. Local government units get a share of our licensing fees. 55% of all of the retailer licensing fees go back to the local government unit where those licenses are issued, and that works out to almost $9 million. The other half of that, plus a few other things, come back to the MLCC directly for licensing and enforcement staff. And there is $2.6 million that goes to Department of Health and Human Services for alcoholism programs. Michigan Department of Agriculture gets about $700,000 for the Craft Beverage Council. And then new to this pie chart that wouldn't have been there in previous years is that $15 million for the Road Patrol Fund that the legislature passed middle of last year and was enacted later in the year. So all total, $633 million and change, and that comes from profits from the sale of spirits and also our license fees and our violation fines.
One thing we wanted to mention so that you're aware when the time comes for the budget, which is budget season's right around the corner. We do have 4 different areas that we are very thankful and very pleased that were included in the executive budget recommendation. We are currently in the development of a new IT system for our finance, kind of our back office. This system supports all of those over 11,000 products that are available for sale, does all of our sales and inventory, supports just under $2 billion in total liquor sales. That system that we currently have is over 40 years old. So we are extremely pleased that several years ago we received funding to upgrade that system. We are in the process of that. We expect to have it actually launch and go live sometime this fall. But one of the items in this year's budget request is $900,000 to help continue and close out that particular project. We have a separate amount of $900,000. This is our ongoing kind of software systems. It would be both for our finance system, which we refer to as SIPS, and then also our AIM system, which supports all of our licensing functionality. We have to pay annual license fees for those systems. I kind of call it helps us keep the lights on for our IT systems. So that's the second $900,000 that's in the budget for this year. And then we also have an increase in our allocated amount for our governmental law grants. It's for $1.5 million. As David kind of mentioned, part of our funding is a pass-through to several different groups or agencies. One of those is actually kind of a revenue sharing with the local units of government. So 55% of all of our retail license fees under the statute gets passed along to the local units of government. So within your communities where those licenses are held, we do those payments 4 times a year. We actually have an allocated amount that is capped, and last year we came up against that cap. So we are requesting an increase in that $1.5 million. That particular fund and that amount, we actually can't spend the money until we actually receive it in. So this really just allows us to be able to, once we have the money in the checkbook, to be able to write the checks to those local units of government. And our last budget item that we have in the recommendation this year is for $514,600. This would actually be for additional FTEs and positions for our staffing. So we look forward to that. We're very excited about that, and we hope to have your support when the budget comes around. Last, we wanted to mention just a couple things that we might be working with you over the next legislative session. The special licenses that we talked about, that we issue about 8,000 of those, we would like to modernize that license structure and have some enhancements to that. So we're working on a package that we don't quite have all the details yet, but we will start to bring that forward and have discussions with you in the future. Our chair always likes to make sure to remind everyone regarding our license fees and our fines. Actually, those are decades old. Many of our license fees actually are probably older than many of you. We have license fees that were created back in the 40s. We might even have some a few older than that. So we have license fees as low as $25, $50. I think we even have a $10 one. So our Class C license fee, which is a majority of our licensees, it's a $600 fee, and I believe that was 1945 was when that fee was established. So we just like to remind everyone of that. We also want to continue to do our updates in our technology system for our licensees to interact more virtually with the MLCC. We have virtual appointments available so people can get an appointment with someone on our staff if they, for example, need their license issued quickly, maybe today or by tomorrow. We have that capability available. We launched that during the pandemic. We also launched the ability for our licensees to print their own license. So once they actually do renew, we actually update that in our system. They can then log into their account and actually print their own license. So it doesn't have to be mailed, and they don't have to wait for that in the mail. We, as indicated, just launched our enhancement to allow our licensees to pay their renewal fees for credit cards. We will expand that in the future so that our other license fees or fines would be able to be paid via credit card. And then, as I mentioned, our big project we're working on right now is our finance upgrade system, SIPS Plus, and that's going to launch in the fall. So we, again, continue to try and improve our systems, not only for us internally in the state, but importantly for our licensees and our customers. So that covers our presentation. We wanted to just give you some highlights and overview of the MLCC, some of our funding, some of the licenses that we do, and we'd love to turn it over to questions if anyone has any questions.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that overview and information. As someone who has not really been in the licensing area for liquor control, I'm sure people always have a lot of questions. So I have a couple, and if any of my colleagues have any, just let me know. So what is the typical timeline for an application from the initial filing to receiving it?
Sure, really good question. So our timelines are guided by a couple different things. One, the statute, and then also our applicants. So a lot of the timeline depends on when someone actually places their application with us, if they actually have all of the documents and everything in place. We refer to that, and actually the statute refers to that as a completed application. If someone submits an application to us and we review it and they are missing requirements, we send them out an NOD, a notice of deficiency. Those are usually sent out within about 30 days from when we receive it to review the application. And once we receive those documents back, then we review those, and the file will continue on throughout the process. Depending on what the applicant is applying for, many times it will go out for a field investigation out in the field. We also have time limits on those field investigations. And then it comes back in to our licensing division to be reviewed for one last time, and then brought forth to the commission for a consideration on the docket. Under the statute, the bulk of our applications, we have a 90-day time clock. Our system actually calculates that for us. It does stop anytime we send out those notice of deficiencies or anytime we are waiting on the licensee or the applicant, I should say, to provide information. So it does vary. I think we ran some numbers not that long ago, and I think our average was well under the 90. It was well under the 90 days for our time clock average.
Thank you. That answered a couple of my follow-up about delays and incomplete packages, so 90 days is a good reference. Can you speak to how the commission receives and investigates complaints for alleged violations?
Sure. Okay. David can take
Yeah.
that. He works with
Your
our
turn now.
Veterans and Appeals Division. So.
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that violations and complaints come in to the Liquor Control Commission. We have, and I don't know the exact numbers, but we have investigators that do the investigations for licensing, but also do a variety of inspections and different things that they go out and do to make sure that licensees are in compliance. So when they are out doing their compliance work, they may see a violation. A very common violation are the controlled buy operations, where they have an underage decoy that goes in to make sure that licensees are not selling alcohol to minors. So that's a very common one that you'll see. But there's a number of other things where licensee may allow their liquor liability insurance to lapse, or they may not renew their license, or a variety of other things. So those are how a lot of violations come into our system from us, the Liquor Control Commission. We also work very closely with local government units, local police departments who will submit violation complaints to us. We have a lot of sales to minors come in that way. We also have a lot of intoxicated individuals, police officers that will stop someone who's been drinking and be able to trace it back to a specific bar or restaurant or liquor store. And so there's where we get probably about a third of our violations come in from our partners in the local government, the local police departments. We also then have an anonymous complaint line that citizens can file a complaint, and then we will go out on an investigation. Our investigators will follow up on that. So if there's a parent that's concerned that the local party store is selling to the local high school kids because their child came home and said so, they can make that suggestion to us to look into that, and we will follow up on that and check into that. So there's a variety of avenues where that information can come in through to us.
Okay, I have a few more, but for time, the last one, are you looking at adjusting those licenses and fees that are 60 years old or older?
Yeah, currently we do not have anything in the works. We just like to remind everyone that that is our fee structure that we operate under, but we currently don't have anything we're actively working on or any bill proposals for you at this time.
Okay.
I think the first thing that you will probably see from us would be our special license package that will come forth.
Okay. Thank you. With that, Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I'll pick up right there. Since you reminded us about how old and potentially antiquated some of these fines and fees could be, I'm just curious, though you don't have anything ready for us right now, when we look particularly at the fines, are you finding that some of the fines could no longer be a deterrent to violations because they're so low? I have a young person, intern, who comes with me to Lansing, and when he drives, he parks out front, and I'm like, okay, you know you only got a couple of hours to be out there. Yeah, it's just $15, I don't care. So it's not a deterrent from, moving the car because it's just $15. I'm like, okay. So I'm just curious, in this regard, are you finding anything like this? Do you all have data on that?
I would say it's a definite possibility. Obviously, when you have any fines that are low, many individuals could refer to it just as a cost of business or something. So briefly, and David might be able to add more to it, as I said, he's our deputy director over our hearings and appeals division with our majority of our fines and violations. But it depends on how old the statute language is. So our more critical violations, so our sales to minor, sales to intox, those are much higher fines than a general violation of our code or our act. Our general violation codes, it pretty much goes to a max of $300. And then our hearing commissioners who will hear those violations will make a determination as to whether there's any fine at all or up to that maximum amount of $300 on those fines.
Quick follow-up.
Add more to that, David?
What's the maximum for selling to a minor?
So the maximum for selling to a minor is $1,000. And rarely does that hit $1,000 right on the first violation. So there's a lot of different components that can go into that. Obviously, if it's a decoy operation where we send a decoy out, a lot of times if it's a first violation, we won't hit $1,000. But if there's a situation where there was an intoxicated person, and selling to an intoxicated person is also $1,000. We don't see as many of those because they're a little bit harder to find. but sales to minors, if we do have those situations, the younger the age of the individual does a lot of times play into that. There are some of our attorneys that will just draw a line in the sand and say, if you sell to a 17-year-old minor, you should be getting the max fine. Now, again, that is the determination of that hearing commissioner that has to make that determination. But there's also, in addition to the fines, we can also suspend or revoke licenses. And often that's what happens with those. We hit that cap of that $1,000, but you got somebody who's a bad actor, well, now we suspend your license. And if you get 3 sales to minors or 3 sales to intox or a combination thereof in a 2-year period of time, the statute requires us to either suspend or revoke. We have no choice in the matter. So if they see that, they know they're going to get that suspension at minimum and revocation at maximum. And we've had to do that a couple times recently with just really bad actors that had 4 or 5 sales to minors or sales to intox, and we've revoked licenses.
Thank you. Rep. Beerline.
Thank you. Could you just clarify what the difference is between your licenses and permits?
So the license is the main license. We think of it so much this way. So you have a Class C license, which is the average license for a bar or restaurant. And then the permits are individual things on top of that allow you to do certain things. Most common is a Sunday sales permit. So the law says you can't sell alcohol on Sundays unless you have a Sunday sales permit. We have a Sunday sales AM permit and a Sunday sales PM permit, and that's all governed off of the statute. The legislature said you had to have both. And so you have those. Outdoor service area is a separate permit. Off-premises storage. So if you need like a storage area that's not licensed premises, you can get a permit like that. So there's a variety of additional permits like that. Some of them have a lot of pieces and parts to them that we have to investigate. A banquet facility permit is essentially an extension of your Class C license at another location. Has to go through just as much of an investigation as a regular Class C. Some permits are relatively easy to do. Other permits have a lot of steps to them.
Representative Grant.
Yes, I know that we've had a question about the fines. Mine is more on the fee side. With the age of some of those fees, how do we measure up with other states? Are we still in line with the cost of what a liquor license or a permit would cost in another state, or how do you see that?
Actually, it would really depend on the license type and the whatever state you'd be looking at. Other states are structured completely differently, so it's a little bit hard to compare like apples to apples, so to speak. I think in many cases you would find overall we are probably lower, but yet there could be instances where we're fairly close. It's just going to depend on what type of license and what state you're looking at.
Thank you. And I don't expect you to have this answered right now, but I would love to just in general see how our revenue lines up, since I know there are several different ways that states can do it, but just if we are in line with revenue that other states bring in when it comes to liquor licensing and permits.
Sure, I can tell you, we can provide that information to you. We can actually send it to the chair if you'd like to pass that through the entire committee. I can tell you as far as our total sales for liquor in the state of Michigan at that almost $2 billion sales amount, I keep hoping every year we're going to hit that $2 billion so that we can say that, but we keep coming in just under it, but it's still an incredible amount. That is very hard. We are one of the top sales states for alcohol within the U.S., so there's really only one or maybe 2 other states that are in that same ballpark.
All good? Well, thank you so much. One thing I noticed and observed in your presentation, that during the pandemic, how the request for licenses went down, but, consumption went up.
Yes.
So, so glad to be out of that. So looking forward to working with you, and thank you so much, and get a chance to get that information to us.
Thank you. Anytime you have any questions, we do have our contact information listed here, but we would be happy to help. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure to be here today.
Up next, we have testimony on House Bills 4132 and 4133, sponsored by Rep. Snyder and Rep. Mueller. And we will welcome the reps to give an overview of their bills.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and fellow committee members. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to discuss potential legislation to increase safety measures on road construction sites for workers and motorists across our state. The old saying goes that in Michigan we have only 2 seasons, winter and construction season. And I'm sure more than a few of you encountered both this morning. 17 states allow for the use of speed camera enforcement in construction zones. Statistics show that in the state of Maryland, implementation of automated enforcement in work zones resulted in 80% reduction of speeding violations, and fatalities dropped by half in the first 3 years of implementation. Over the last 10 years, there have been an average of approximately 14 worker fatalities in Michigan work zones per year, ranging from 8 to 25 fatalities a year. My bill, House Bill 4132, creates a new section within the Michigan Vehicle Code that provides that MSP and MDOT may agree to authorize the use of automated speed enforcement systems in work zones, on highways, and streets under MDOT's jurisdiction. Where an automated speed enforcement system detects a driver exceeding the posted speed limit by 10 miles an hour or more in a work zone while workers are in physical proximity to the roadway and not protected by a guardrail or barrier, the bill creates a 3-tier implementation of sanctions. I emphasize the 3-tier here in reg reform this morning. A first violation or a violation for the first time in 3 years results in a written warning. A second violation that occurs less than 3 years from the last violation results in a civil infraction punishable by a civil fine of not more than $150. A third or subsequent violation that occurs less than 3 years from the last violation results in a civil infraction punishable by a civil fine of not more than $300. The bill also directs that in a judicial proceeding regarding a violation, it is considered prima facie evidence of the facts contained in a recorded image if an automated speed enforcement system operator or public or police officer sign a sworn statement after inspecting the recorded image. That evidence of a violation, along with proof that the individual given the citation was the registered owner of the vehicle at the time of violation, creates a rebuttable presumption that the registered owner was the individual who committed the violation. The presumption that the registered owner was the individual who committed the violation can be rebutted by 3 different options. 1, the registered owner files an affidavit stating that they were not the operator of the vehicle at the time of the violation. 2, the registered owner testifies in court under oath that they were not the operator at the time of the violation. Or 3, there exists a certified copy of a police report showing the vehicle was reported stolen before the time of the alleged violation. The bill includes a new section that creates the Work Zone Safety Fund within the state treasury. Any civil fines paid for violations are paid to MDOT, and any amount in excess of the cost for installing and using the automated speed enforcement systems are to be deposited into the Work Zone Safety Fund. MDOT shall be the administrator of the fund and expend money from the fund on appropriation to improve worker safety in work zones. MDOT shall use the fund for traffic control devices in work zones and coordinate with MSP for increased police presence in work zones. My bill is a reintroduction of House Bill 5750 from last session that was reported from the House Judiciary Committee with overwhelming bipartisan support before dying during lame duck. And I would just add to that then Chair Filler of House Judiciary was very influential in getting this bill to the point that we're at today. It was a long process. I did not introduce this obviously last year, but Rep. Cambenzi did, and she worked diligently with Chair Filler to get to the point that we're at today. So that's my bet.
What he said. Good bill. No, really, all mine does is like he mentioned, it creates a work zone safety fund, so any of the revenue that is generated from these sources go back in to help protect workers. And as you know, I know what it feels like to hit a barrier recently. Those things don't move. So, you know, we got to make sure that our workers are safe out there. There's, like Representative said, Rep. Cambenzi worked on this last year with Representative Eisen. We've got it to a point where it's workable. We've changed things like the speed from 5 miles an hour up to 10 miles per hour, because as a former law enforcement officer, one of my issues I had with it was taking the discretion away from an officer, and most officers really don't write tickets on the freeway unless you're going 10 miles per hour over. You know, we worked on things to make sure that people weren't ticketed unfairly. Now with Zoom, you know, if you get pulled over in a work zone up in the UP, you don't have to take off 2 days of work to drive up there. You can do Zoom. You know, that was an issue before Zoom where, you know, that could happen. You know, we do this with parking tickets. It's not really a big brother thing. It's a safety thing. So, I mean, when you really think about it, when you think about filling out an affidavit or talking to your dipshit buddy who was driving your car that got the ticket, that's less of an inconvenience than it is planning a funeral for a family member that works in the construction industry. So your short-term inconvenience for you actually breaking law and putting people at safety, there's revenues to correct this to make sure that you're not unfairly treated by the government, but it also keeps in line the safety of our people that build our roads and our infrastructure to keep them safe, as well as our police officers safe too, because when you have cameras out there, that's one less time that you have an officer on the side of the road late at night if they're doing late night construction. That takes the possibility of getting hit by you know, a drunk driver, a distracted motorist in a work zone. And last year, as you know, if you look back at testimony, and Representative Snyder mentioned it too, that in Maryland, it's about changing the behavior of people. And if we do this, actually, you know, starting it now with a lot of these things, our younger drivers will learn that this is not acceptable. You know, you can't teach an old dog new tricks and people are going to still speed. Well, they're older, they can pay the fines, there's no tickets. But it's really about changing the behavior of our young drivers to make sure that they are paying attention. And where you hit young people at, their pocketbooks, because then they go to their parents and ask for it, and their parents slap them around a little bit and say, hey, slow down in a construction zone. So, you know, it's not a big brother issue at all. I know some worry about this expanding to other areas of law enforcement, and that's, you know, we can stop that if we want, but that's not the case here. This is really just about giving our road workers and construction workers the ability to just to live and work in a safer environment. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And it really is about worker safety and creating expectations. A lot of our younger drivers, you know, struggle with distractions, and that adds to unintended consequences. And living near I-75, where we're working on the Gordie Howe Bridge, it's been year-round for the last few years. So I know that last session they got it to the goal line. Will Jamal Williams, this one, we'll punch it in for you. So with that, I only have one question. Are there any expectations to have any full-time employees to do this, or will this already be a part of what they do now, state police?
So I did not see a analysis from HFA for today's bill, but I was looking back at last year's analysis, and it anticipated a potential of 6 FTEs for the department to administer the program for MSP.
Thank you. Representative Aragona?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have 2 questions, if that's all right. First of all, Rep. Mueller, you mentioned signage. I was just wondering, is there language in the bill, or how are we going to deal with signage? Is that something that's necessary? Obviously, you know, when you have a speed limit, you have to post that. When the speed comes down within a construction zone, that's usually posted. Is there a necessity to ensure that new speed limit is posted? And then is there also going to be a sign for, you know, the fact that there is this zone that will then have cameras, so you post to drivers, you know, look out, this is a camera enforced zone. And then my last question real quick actually bounces off the chairman's question of regarding distracted driving. I'm sure you guys have dealt with and talked with like the state police and things, and in some of my local police departments, I know that distracted driving is becoming a very big issue. You know, it's in fact it's getting as big as drinking and driving, right? So how much of an issue do you think in these zones is speeding rather than simply distracted driving? Thank you.
Well, I can't really, I mean, I'm going kind of off last year's memory. We did have in the bill too that there was gonna be a grace period where they're gonna have signs and advertise, but I'm not sure if that's I mean, he can speak to it, but last time we had something in there that said there's a 6-month grace period, it might be less now. There's gonna be signs, it'll say, speed enforcement zones a mile ahead. They'll have plenty of warnings, just like when they do, click it or ticket. They have to go out and put up signs saying they're gonna have, click it or ticket enforcement in these areas. That's part of the grant that they have to do when they do that. So this will be a similar thing. And if it's not, that's something I'm sure we could easily put in there just to give motorists another warning. When it comes to the speed and distracted driving, I mean, they're both one and the same in a way. You have people that speed, and then you have people that, are even more dangerous. They speed when they're texting and they're not paying attention. So there's a combination of both. I mean, we've all seen the videos in the last year of, motorists going over 100 miles per hour in construction zones and the troopers having to pull them over. If you're standing on the freeway, I mean, a car going by at 100 miles an hour is pretty, scary if they're coming, 2 feet from you when they're going by. And then you have, like you said, you have all the other distractions that are going in there. So it's kind of twofold. I mean, a lot of times people are doing other things and they don't pay attention to their speed, and then they're speeding, and then they're going too fast for conditions, and then they get into an accident, and then they get hurt.
I'll just quickly say that in most work zones, they do have the signage now that say kill or injure a worker. They put it there. So I think we can probably add the verbiage that may be, because we don't want everybody to know where the cameras are. It's a may.
So I'll just
this law.
It does. The language in my bill does include it. If you page 2, line 15, and I'll just read it because it's only a couple sentences. A sign must be placed at the approach to a work zone where an automated speed enforcement system is installed and used under this section, indicating that the work zone is monitored by an automated speed enforcement system. And it's only where workers are present, as we talked about, or I believe I mentioned in my testimony, and it's not in situations where there are barriers, as Rep. Mueller knows how barriers work out. So,
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my questions have already been answered. So with that, I can pass it on. Let me just be certain, because we talked about the marketing, because I wanted to be certain. I wanted to know how people were going to know that this was coming. So you touched on that. Apologies. No, this is good work. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Nair.
Thank you, Chair. I got a couple, so bear with me. Basically, what will there be a determining factor as workers present in the work zone there? How does the electronic system know when the workers aren't there and are there, and what will be the metrics to do that? Do you have an idea?
That's going to be up to, I guess, when they promulgate some of the rules with MDOT, the foreman or somebody would have to be in charge of, or the state police or whoever is in charge of it, making sure that, MDOT, they have work schedules, they know what they're going to be following, and they can coordinate that. So there'll be somebody that's on scene that would be able to turn that on and turn that off. And I guess, whenever you have human error, there's going to be human error. There's human error in everything that we do. So that's why we have the ability to challenge this. It's not like you're just going to get the ticket and you're stuck with it. So, there's not going to be things without error, but in the long run, again, it's about safety for our workers and changing the behavior of our younger drivers. But there will be somebody there that turns it on and turns it off at the time. And that's part of the thing. If you get caught with it, you can say there wasn't anybody out there, and then they can go back and look at stuff, I'm sure, because they have cameras.
Yeah. Now, do you see all the work zones? There's several throughout the state. Do you see the majority of them being hooked up to the system, or do you see this more as a problematic area?
Currently, the language says may, so it's up to the department, to MDOT and state police to put the program together and roll it out. It doesn't necessarily mean that it would be in every work zone. The option is there, but it's up to the department.
And the other thing that we didn't mention, I don't know if we did or not, but I think in the bill, if it has anything like it did last time, is after 5 years, MSP will have to conduct a study of finding out how many tickets were written, where they were written at, how fast people were going, what kind of violations, the race, ethnicity, all the personal data, to find out if it's actually working, because we don't want to keep, allocating money or spending money on something that doesn't work. But, when you look at other states, the fatalities have went down and the safety in the work zones have improved. So I don't think that's going to happen, but we just put that in there just to make sure that we're not having another fluff program.
Yeah, and going to the fine level and the money that goes into that from the tickets, is that going to be held separate from the accounting where it's just strictly operating funds?
No, that's what my bill does, is actually it takes the money and it creates the work zone safety fund. So the money that is generated off of these cameras for violations of the law will go back into the Department of or to the work safety fund, so then they can use that for, if they need to buy more barriers or whatever it is that they need for safety, they can allocate the money for safety reasons.
Okay, so it won't, the two won't intermingle, they'll be actually handled
That's not
separately.
the intention.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, gentlemen. And, when I think about this and what it will do, right now we had to re-educate people on when you see a trooper or a officer pulled over on the side of the road to kind of get over, if available, to the next lane. And it's all about safety. So with that, I have a couple of cards wishing to speak in support of the bill. I have Mark Hutchinson from Blue Line Solutions. No, you guys can have a seat. Don't go anywhere. No, come on. Good morning.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to come speak to you. As you can tell, as soon as I open my mouth, I'm not from Michigan. I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I own a company called Blue Line Solutions. It is an automated speed enforcement company, and we do work like this bill would implement. My company is very different from any other company out there in the market in that I'm a retired law enforcement officer. We have about 17 retired law enforcement officers that work for me. We also have a number of EMTs and firefighters. And the reason that that's important is because we've all picked up a lot of dead bodies. And that's actually what made me continue into this career after my law enforcement career. At 19, I picked up my first dead body, and it was a 10-year-old. His name was Matthew, and I'll never forget him. And oddly enough, the car had hit a dump truck. So construction zones and school zones are something that's very important to me and our company, because our focus is to drive down the numbers of crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our nation's roadways. After I left the sheriff's office, I went to the governor's Office of Highway Safety in Tennessee as a law enforcement liaison. Went to the governor's office in Georgia as a law enforcement coordinator, and then came back to Tennessee governor's office as a law enforcement administrator. And you might have heard a little bit about a program called Click It or Ticket. Well, it was my job to implement that program in Tennessee with law enforcement in 2000. And the first thing that we did was we captured data to determine what the seatbelt usage rate was at that time, and not only in Tennessee, but every other state in the United States. And public information and education was the second component of the Click It or Ticket program, as the representative over here mentioned a few minutes ago. You started seeing brochures and pamphlets and things of that nature show up in pediatricians' offices and health departments. Seatbelts save lives, Click It or Ticket. Because let's face it, most everybody in this room probably stood up in the back seat of a car when you were a little kid, because, back in those days, or when I was that age, seatbelts weren't a big deal, right? But look to today, what the difference is in our knowledge of that subject. And that was done through public information and education combined with enforcement through the Click It or Ticket program. Click It or Ticket proved that public information and education alone doesn't work. Because if there's no bite to the bark, people just don't pay attention. Likewise, though, enforcement alone doesn't work either, because the only people that learn about the enforcement is the one person at a time that's pulled over. And as you all know, we see state troopers in construction zones almost every time we drive through one. But we also know that that trooper's not there to pull anybody over, right? They're there just to be seen. So that is not a deterrent to people to slow down. So our company is focused on a program that would do exactly what this legislation is designed to do, and that is to modify driving behavior. That is through a combination of public information and education combined with enforcement. And we obviously support this program, but we would also ask the opportunity to work with the bill sponsors to work on some of the language that, through our experience in other states, can actually make the program a little stronger, the language a little better for the state. So with that, I'd entertain any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I think we have a question for you. Rep. Phillip?
Real quick, so what's the name of your company?
Blue Line Solutions.
Okay, and have you put together a state-based system like the one laid out in this legislation?
We've worked with in Virginia, for instance, the law there allows this type of enforcement, but there it can be done at a state level or local level. So that's an example of where we've worked in construction zone programs, as well as school zones throughout the country, the entire country.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, speaking in support of the bill, we have Lance B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lance
Give
Ben-Onimi. I am the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association, or more commonly known as MITA. MITA represents over 500 companies within our state that build our roads, bridges, underground water and sewers, and much other infrastructure projects throughout the state. We are here in strong support of House Bills 4132 and 4133. We thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking these important issues up. We thank the bill sponsors for introducing this legislation as well. I'll try not to repeat what previous speakers have said and maybe give a little background on why we're here today. We have seen a rise in work zone fatalities over the past several years. Our members who employ those workers wanted to take action. So the Department of Transportation in Michigan and the heavy construction industry, led by MITA, formed the Work Zone Safety Task Force. Within that task force, there are a dozen or so different committees that talked about how we can improve the safety of our workers within those zones. Much of the recommendations that came out were not legislative actions, more on the educational piece of that. You may have seen some of our billboards last year that showed "Watch out for workers" and showed some of those workers in their own environments, conveniently placed right around construction zones. But we dove in a little bit further, and we wanted to find out, are there other measures, maybe on a policy level, that we can change? Working through our national affiliate, the American Road and Transportation Builders Association, or ARTBA, we realized that there are 17 other states, as the previous speakers have suggested, that implement a camera enforcement within work zones. So we took it a step further, and with our coalition of state police, local law enforcements, MDOT, and the heavy construction industry, we actually met with Pennsylvania, Illinois, and Maryland to talk about their programs, to find out what was working, what was not working, met with their state police officers, met with their Department of Transportations. In this world of Zoom, it's easy to do that nowadays. So we were able to get sort of what they were doing in their states, find out what was working, what might not be working, and that's how this legislation was developed. We took some of the best practices from those states, and we avoided some of the concerns that others had said. As you've heard earlier, we saw a reduction over 80% in Maryland of speeding violations. I think that's huge. You see almost virtually no repeat offenders. This actually works. We know that this is an effective tool in slowing down the motoring public within work zones and help keep our workers safe. We know this works, and we hope that you can support it.
Any questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, wishing to speak in support of the bill is Jonathan Byrd of the Michigan Laborers Union.
Great, good morning. My name is Jonathan Byrd, and I'm the Director of External Affairs for the Michigan Laborers District Council, which includes 7 local unions that represent all 83 counties in Michigan. Let me first start by thanking Chairman Carter and the House Committee on Regulatory Reform for allowing me to discuss proposed legislation to increase safety measures on road construction sites. I'd also like to thank our bill sponsors, Representative Snyder, Representative Mueller. I want to thank you both for your dedication and steadfast work to keep road workers safe. I also, too, want to take a moment and thank Lance Binomini and our MITA partners. In principle and substantially by detail, the Michigan Laborers District Council and the 14,000 union construction laborers we represent support House Bills 4132 and 4133. Before going into specific elements of House Bills 4132 and 33 that our union supports, I'd like to provide the members with a brief description of our training system. Our union takes great pride in being a trade that provides state-of-the-art training to all our members. Our training fund spends millions of dollars every year raised directly from our members to ensure that a highly skilled workforce is available to our signatory contractors. We are consistently ready and willing to meet the needs of the industry. Ensuring our members have proper training to do the job safely is a key objective of our union. However, no amount of training from our esteemed instructors can ensure that our members are always safe on the job, especially on road construction sites. Over the last decade, there is an average of approximately 14 worker fatalities in Michigan work zones per year, with a range of 8 to 25 fatalities per year. During this time period, we've seen a near doubling of the average annual number of fatalities, rising from approximately 9 per year in 2010 to nearly 18 per year in 2020. In fact, in just the fall of 2020, 5 road workers were killed and 3 were injured. 2 of the workers killed were our members. Last year, a member of my union brother, Reeson Tillman Morgan, was killed while working on a bridge in Van Buren County. This tragedy could have been avoided with better safety precautions had they been in place. I also have with me members of our local union, Laborers Local 355, in the audience that can describe some of their specific experiences if members would like to speak after the meeting. Our union views all of these occurrences as unacceptable, and every member of our union should have the confidence that when they go to work in the morning, they will be able to return home safely at night to their families. House Bills 4132 and 4133 seeks to address this issue by allowing for the use of an automatic speed enforcement system in work zones only. In addition, this legislation requires signage to notify motorists of the upcoming photo-enforced work zone. Some of you may be familiar with these signs and the automatic speed enforcement if you travel to other states, including Illinois, Pennsylvania, Maryland, to name a few. These states have seen a significant decline in speeding in work zones once programs like these are implemented. In other states, if other states can take steps to make work zones safer, so can Michigan. I'd like to thank both MDOT and the Michigan State Police for their diligence in researching best practices. And I'd also like to again thank MITA and our signatory contractors for their interest in helping to make work zones safer. To summarize, the Michigan laborers believe that House Bills 4132 and 33 are a positive step towards ensuring work sites on Michigan's highways are safer for both workers and drivers. I'd also again like to thank the committee for allowing me to address this legislation on behalf of the Michigan laborers. I thank you all for your interest and look forward to providing our expertise on this issue and any others the committee may examine over the session. Again, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have at this time.
Seeing no questions, thank you, Mr. Byrd.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And to the laborers as well. Thank you, guys. Not wishing to speak in opposition of the bill is Debbie Mikula from the Michigan Library Association. Next, we have House Bill 4201, sponsored by Representative Grant.
Hello. Thank you, Chair Carter, and my fellow committee members for the opportunity to testify in support of my bill, House Bill 4201, which would eliminate the sunset provision that would prohibit restaurants and bars to sell cocktails to go starting January 1st, 2026. Eliminating this sunset would allow restaurants to sell cocktails to go in perpetuity. Allowing cocktails to go to be sold by restaurants and bars was initially a COVID-19 measure to help them stay afloat, but has quickly become a mainstay for business districts in my community, as well as communities across Michigan and even the country. Prior to this change, only beer and wine were allowed to be sold with takeout deliveries in Michigan. That left cocktails as the only beverage provided by the businesses that could not be sold to those who were choosing takeout. The change to expand this allowance to cocktails was designed to help restaurants and bars utilize as much of their quality product as possible, even if their dining rooms were closed or limited. This has proved to be a boom for local businesses and has helped residents experience the quality craft of their local distillers from home. It has become the norm in so many communities in Michigan, even as the pandemic has faded. This change also reflected strong support in Michigan and the rest of the country. A study in the early months of the pandemic showed that 78% of adults in Michigan favored the proposal that would allow them to purchase a cocktail to go with their meal. As of last month, in the U.S., 32 states have either extended or allowed permanently the sale of cocktails to go. The initial change to allow cocktails to go included a sunset provision that was meant to end in 2024 and was extended to 2026. It has now been almost 3 years since it was enacted and has proven to be the new standard for our restaurants and bars, and has also proven itself to be a smart pro-business decision. Instead of extending the sunset yet another time, I am here to say that we should eliminate it. Simply, my bill ensures restaurants and bars can continue to make the most of their product and provide it to their community in whatever way the community can use it, whether inside the restaurant or at home. Allowing this sunset provision to remain would only hinder restaurants that would have been operating under the new rules for 6 years by the time that it will go into effect. This legislation was passed with almost unanimous support in the Senate last year and was not taken up in time in the House prior to the end of session. It is my hope that this body will take action to continue our support of restaurants and bars across the state. I am proud to support this legislation and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. John McNamara, Vice President of Government Affairs for Michigan Restaurant and Lodging Association. Rep Grant covered everything in great detail, so I will just say thank you for your support, Rep Grant. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for taking this up, and looking forward to get this done this year, and happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Rep Grant, and thank you. You answered my question about how many states, 32. Have we heard about any increased usage by minors because of this?
Not that we've seen, and you've seen, so a lot of the third-party deliveries, so for example, DoorDash and Uber Eats have created a two-factor authentication where you need to punch in your driver's license number ahead of time so they can reference it, and then when they deliver it, they also have to cross-reference against that ID. And you're seeing that even small operators will say, okay, where are we going? What's the order? Then they check on both ends. The biggest problem we saw on this was on the front end when, due to supply chain issues, people just couldn't get proper materials and they were getting maybe a little too creative with how a cocktail to go is packaged. But since supply chain has caught up, we've seen those go down.
Thank you. Have a question from Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative. So back to the packaging, to be certain that our minors aren't getting a hold of this. Forgive me, I haven't read the bill all the way through, but since we're having this discussion, that's why we have testimony. As it relates to our minors and the home delivery, are you saying that, is it in the legislation that they have to be certain that the person who receives The cocktail is at least 21 years old. I just want to be certain that it's in here.
Yes, that is a part of the legislation, and he mentioned how it works for delivery, but if you were going to the establishment yourself to pick up your food and a cocktail, you have to confirm your age and your ID then. A lot of times if you call the order in, they will say, absolutely, we'll take the order, but please be sure to bring your ID in. We will be checking that.
Okay, all right. And then do you all have any like samples of what the packaging looks like so that it's different from, right now you can get a fountain drink that's just in a cup and you get a straw. Is this packaged differently?
So if it goes into a cup or something like that, it does have to be labeled that it contains alcohol. It has to be labeled the type of drink. But what you're seeing more and more are sort of like the 8-ounce sort of plastic screw-top bottles that the restaurant will then put a sticker on, but then we'll also have to label. You're also seeing, I'm not sure if you've seen the boxed water is better. You're starting to see people just buy those milk cartons, fill them up and seal them, but they do need to be labeled that they do contain alcohol.
I'll add to that also areas like when the weather is nicer, areas like a business district will have similar labeling for their cups as well, so they know what restaurant something came from, but what area, what district it came from.
Thank you. So now we have a few people that are wishing to speak. And see a few minutes on here. Let's see if we can get it down to 2 for our people that want to speak. First, we have in opposition Mike Tobias from the Michigan Alcohol Policy.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. I'll do my best to get it down to 2 minutes.
Thank you.
So my name is Mike Tobias. I'm representing Michigan Alcohol Policy, Promoting Health and Safety, also known as MAP. We were established in 2009 with a mission to advocate for laws and policies that reduce the illegal and harmful use of alcohol. We are opposed to House Bill 4201. Basic prevention principle is that the more accessible and available alcohol is or a substance is, the higher the chance for alcohol-related problems. I made a mistake. With over 17,000 alcohol retailers, alcohol is very accessible and available in our state. During the start of the pandemic, alcohol is made more accessible and available by creating social drinking districts, allowing cocktails to go, creating temporary and permanent outdoor service areas, increasing home delivery of alcohol. This increased availability resulted in record sales of alcohol in 2020 in Michigan. Now we are seeing increases in alcohol use disorder. The following is a headline from March 6, Michigan Radio News article by Kate Wells. Michigan hospitals saw a 50% spike in alcohol-related liver disease during COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, there were 357 deaths in alcohol-involved crashes in 2021, up 27% from 281 in 2012. So a 27% increase on alcohol-involved crashes. Earlier this month, on March 7th, Farrah Hanley, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Chief Deputy for Health, gave a presentation to the appropriations subcommittees on DHHS. She reported that in fiscal year 22, 63,000 individuals received treatment for substance use disorder. Of the 63,000 individuals receiving treatment, alcohol was the #1 substance from which people sought treatment.
Mr. Tobias.
Yes.
Just so you know, we have it. It will be on the website and it will be on the record as well.
Okay. Well, with that being said, if you have any questions, let me know. But I just want to highlight that, this is a growing problem that we seem to be doing nothing about. Instead, I think we're making it worse by some of the things that we're doing. And I just don't see any reason to make it permanent now when restaurants can still sell. I mean, I know I'm repeating myself, but if you have any questions, I'd try to answer them for you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? No? Thank you, Mr. Tobias. Next, we have Mason Dorr, representing MLBA. Which I'm sure is Michigan Licensed Beverage Association. All right.
Morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for allowing me to speak on behalf of the Michigan Licensed Beverage Association today. My name is Mason Dorr, and I'm joined here with a member of our association who owns multiple restaurants in the Lansing area, and he's here today to talk about his positive experience with Drinks to Go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for allowing me to speak here today. My name is John Vlahakis. My family owns some restaurants and bars in the area. Ella's Teco, Mexican restaurant in downtown East Lansing, Dublin Square Irish Pub, downtown East Lansing, and partnered in Los Tres Amigos in Mason. I'm here today to tell you guys about how the to-go drinks have helped us in our business starting during COVID. This is a sample of, this is our pitcher of margaritas to go. It's the same amount of margarita that you'll get in the restaurant, minus the ice. When these were first allowed, we didn't hesitate to jump on board with it. It ended up being a big spike for us. It helped us during the slow periods. It became one of our signature items for to-goes at the restaurant. We see large bumps in this summertime when people are going up north. If you haven't been to Ella's Teco, we've been around since 1976. It's got a big local following. We've got a lot of signature dishes that you can't get at any other restaurants besides Ella's Teco. So we'd see time and time again, you get chips and salsa, burritos, topopos, and a pitcher of margaritas, and they go up north for the weekend. So these are huge for our to-go business. Around Christmas time, around for gifts, around summertime when people are traveling, taking them up north with them to their cottage. We've seen a huge customer satisfaction with it, being able to come in, being that you can only get signature dishes in our restaurant and our signature margarita. This is our house margarita. Being able to take the drink with you as your to-go item, so you can go home, have your topopo, have a margarita, kind of makes that whole thing click. So we're very happy with it. We'd like to see it be a permanent thing. And if you have any questions, I'm trying to answer for you.
Thank you, and I guess thanks for bringing that prop. Representative McFall, you have a question?
Yeah, I just have you said that there was a spike. Do you have any idea of numbers, like what it went up?
I didn't bring any specific numbers with you. I know that we've averaged we buy the bottles by the case now from distributors. We used to run to the store when it first got allowed and buy bottles and have them for the week. Now we buy 6 cases at a time of 30 cases, or 30 bottles per case, and we're usually filling a case a month. And then come summertime and Christmas time, that's going up to 2-3 cases a month, depending on the event, what's going on, how popular they get.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Any questions? No? Okay. All right. Wishing not to speak, but in support of the bill, we have Paige Fultz from Laura. Wishing not to speak in support of the bill, we have Nate Henschel from Grand Rapids Chamber. Wishing not to speak, but in support of the bill, is Leah Robinson from the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. Wishing not to speak in support of the bill is Matt Sowash, Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, DISCUS. Wishing not to speak, but in support of the bill, is Brendan Ringlever from the Michigan Spirits Association. Seeing no absent members and there being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.